There's a book in your Bible that was never meant to be fully understood when it was written. Not by the prophet who penned it, not by the kings who read it, not even by the early church. The angel told Daniel directly, "Seal up the vision, it's not for now." But here's what most people miss. What was sealed wasn't hidden. It was preserved, waiting for a specific generation. A generation that would possess something previous centuries did not. Not just technology, not just information. Something far more dangerous. The ability to see the pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because Daniel wasn't describing ancient empires. He was describing a system, a global architecture, a final expression of human power that would rise at the exact moment when the world believed it had outgrown prophecy. That moment is now. What you're about to discover isn't speculation. It's documentation, historical, textual, undeniable. 5 prophecies, sealed for centuries, now unfolding in real time. And the most unsettling part, most of the church doesn't even know it's happening. Why was Daniel told to seal the book? That's not a rhetorical question, it's the key to everything. In Daniel 12:4, the angel doesn't say, "Hide the book." He says, "Seal it." That's a legal term. A document is sealed when its contents are protected until a designated moment of opening. It's not destroyed. It's not forgotten. It's preserved under divine authority until the conditions for understanding are met. And here's what the church has quietly avoided for generations. Daniel himself didn't understand what he was shown. He asked multiple times. The angel's response? "Go your way, Daniel. The words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Not until Jesus returns. Until the time of the end. That's a season, a period. A specific historical window when knowledge increases, when global systems form, when what was cryptic becomes suddenly, disturbingly clear. Now ask yourself, why would God give visions to a man in Babylon about events that wouldn't be understood for over 2,500 years? Because prophecy isn't about prediction, it's about preparation. And the generation that needed to be prepared wasn't Daniel's, it was ours. Look at the historical pattern. Every time a major prophetic seal broke in Scripture, it corresponded with a shift in human civilization. The Exodus, the exile, the incarnation, the resurrection, each one redefined what was possible. Each one was preceded by a prophetic text that seemed incomprehensible until the moment it became undeniable. Daniel is that text for the end of the age. And the reason most pastors won't teach it deeply? Because once you open Daniel with intellectual honesty, you can't teach comfortable Christianity anymore. You can't pretend the world is progressing morally. You can't ignore the political architecture forming around us. You can't dismiss the collision between biblical truth and cultural authority. Daniel forces you to choose. If you're hungry for biblical truths most people overlook, subscribe, because what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew about prophecy. Let's start with what Daniel actually says. In chapter 2, a Babylonian king has a dream. A massive statue, head of gold, chest of silver, belly of bronze, legs of iron, feet of iron mixed with clay. A rock strikes the feet. The entire structure collapses. The rock becomes a mountain that fills the earth. Daniel tells the king, "You are the head of gold." Babylon, the first empire, then the chest of silver, historically identified as Medo-Persia, then the bronze belly, Greece under Alexander, then the legs of iron, Rome. This isn't controversial. Even secular historians acknowledge the prophetic accuracy of this succession. What's controversial is what comes next. The feet, iron mixed with clay. Most prophecy teachers stop there. They say Rome fell. End of story. But Daniel doesn't say the fourth kingdom ends. He says it transforms. Look at the text again, Daniel 2:41-43. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. Notice the language. Divided, mixed, mingled, not unified, not cohesive, but still containing the strength of iron. That's not ancient Rome, that's modern civilization, a global system built on Roman law, Roman governance structures, Roman political philosophy, but fractured, economically interdependent, technologically connected, culturally unstable, iron and clay, strength without unity, power without coherence. Now go to Daniel 7, same empires, different imagery, lion, bear, leopard, a fourth beast, terrifying, dreadful, exceedingly strong, with iron teeth and 10 horns. This is where it gets textual. In ancient Near Eastern symbolism, beasts represent kingdoms. Horns represent rulers or centers of authority. 10 horns don't mean 10 literal kings in succession. They mean a decentralized system of power. Not one throne, 10. Not one empire. A network. And here's the part that doesn't make sense until now. Daniel 7:23 says the fourth beast shall devour the whole earth, trample it and break it in pieces. How does a singular ancient empire devour the whole earth? Rome didn't. Rome controlled the Mediterranean. It never touched the Americas, never ruled Asia comprehensively, never governed sub-Saharan Africa. But what if Daniel wasn't describing Rome's peak? What if he was describing Rome's legacy system in its final form, a global structure, juridically Roman, economically integrated, technologically unified, politically fragmented? That's not history, that's now. Look at the United Nations, the European Union, NATO, the G7, the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund. These aren't empires, they're networks, decentralized, interlocking, operating through treaties, not conquest. They don't need to invade. They legislate. They don't need armies in every nation. They control currencies. They don't rule through force. They rule through compliance. Iron mixed with clay. Now go back to Daniel 2:34-35. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. The stone doesn't strike the head, it strikes the feet. It doesn't destroy Babylon directly. It destroys the final form of the system. And when it does, all previous expressions, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, are simultaneously judged because they never actually ended. They evolved. They merged. They became the architecture of the modern world. And that architecture is what Daniel was told to seal, because only the generation living inside it would recognize it. Now here's where it gets personal. Daniel 7:8. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there, in this horn, were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. A little horn, not a beast. A horn, not an empire. A leader. A voice. But notice, it doesn't conquer the 10 horns. It rises among them. It emerges from within the system. It doesn't destroy the network. It speaks through it. And what does it do? Daniel 7:25. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Change times and law, not by force, by redefinition. This is where most prophecy teaching misses the mark. We expect Antichrist to be a military dictator, a political tyrant, a violent oppressor. But Daniel doesn't describe violence as the primary weapon. He describes words, pompous words, persuasive words. Words that sound reasonable, words that redefine reality. Think about it. What's the greatest threat to biblical Christianity today? It's not persecution in the traditional sense. It's the systematic redefinition of truth, morality, identity, family, biology, justice, and authority. You don't need to kill Christians when you can make Christianity culturally illegal. You don't need to burn Bibles when you can reinterpret them into irrelevance. You don't need to ban the gospel when you can rename the gospel. The little horn doesn't attack the faith, it rebrands it. And here's the part that should make you pause. Daniel says this figure will intend to change times and law. Times, plural, not just calendars. Seasons, historical memory, the perception of what was and what should be, and law, not just legislation, moral framework, the definition of right and wrong. Have you ever noticed this before? How quickly what was considered deviant becomes normalized, how rapidly what was biblical becomes hate speech, how seamlessly morality is legislated out of existence and replaced with compliance. That's not accidental. That's architectural. It's the system preparing for a voice. Now go back to Daniel 7:21-22. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Making war, not with swords, with pressure, cultural, legal, economic, social, and prevailing, not by eliminating believers, by exhausting them, by making faithfulness costly, by making obedience seem extreme. The little horn doesn't win by destroying the church. It wins by making the church conform, and it works until the Ancient of Days intervenes. But here's the question Daniel doesn't answer yet. Who is this figure? What system does he lead? And why does heaven wait so long to act? That's what we're about to uncover. Let's talk about what's happening right now, not in theory, not in speculation, in documented reality. Daniel saw a global system governed by multiple centers of power. We live in it. He saw a structure built on Roman legal philosophy. We inherited it. He saw a world unified economically but divided politically. Look around. He saw a period where knowledge would increase exponentially. We're drowning in it. And he saw a moment when the ability to travel and communicate would create a planetary network. That's not prophecy, that's your phone. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Daniel didn't describe this as progress. He described it as the final stage before divine intervention. Why? Because every prophetic marker he identified points to one reality: humanity reaching the apex of its ability to govern itself without God. Think about the progression. Babylon was raw power, military dominance, force. Persia was administrative genius, bureaucracy, law. Greece was intellectual supremacy, philosophy, culture. Rome was structural mastery, engineering, governance. Each empire added a dimension. Each one contributed to the final architecture. And now, in our generation, all four dimensions have merged into one global reality. We have Babylon's economic power. We have Persia's administrative reach. We have Greece's intellectual dominance. We have Rome's legal structure. And we have something none of them possessed: technology that allows instant global coordination. That's not coincidence, that's completion. Now here's where you come in. Daniel 12:10 says, "Many shall be purified, made white and refined. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." Understand what? The times, the season, the spiritual architecture of the moment they're living in. And here's the test. Are you aware that you're inside a prophetic structure? Or do you think you're just living through normal history? Because if you think this is normal, you'll make normal decisions. You'll prioritize comfort. You'll avoid conflict. You'll accommodate culture. You'll justify compromise. But if you recognize the season, everything changes. Your career becomes a stewardship issue. Your family becomes a discipleship priority. Your theology becomes a matter of survival. Your integrity becomes non-negotiable, because Daniel didn't write this for observers. He wrote it for participants. You're not watching the end of the age from a distance. You're in it. Now let's connect this to the little horn. In Daniel 8:23-25, the same figure reappears in a different vision. "And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty, and also the holy people. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without human means. Notice the description: fierce features, sinister schemes, cunning, deceit. This isn't brute force, this is manipulation. And the key phrase, his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He doesn't create the system, he inherits it. He doesn't build the network, he speaks through it. He's the voice of a structure that was already forming. And here's what should terrify and comfort you simultaneously: he prospers in their prosperity. He doesn't rise during chaos, he rises during stability, during confidence, during a moment when people feel secure. That's now. We're living in the most technologically advanced, economically interconnected, informationally saturated period in human history. And most people feel safer than ever. They don't see the trap. But Daniel did. He saw a moment when humanity would trust its systems more than its creator, when law would replace revelation, when consensus would replace truth, when compliance would replace conviction. And he saw that moment climax in a singular expression of human pride: the little horn. Not a demon, a man, empowered by a system, enabled by a culture, endorsed by a populace that prefers security over freedom, comfort over truth. Now here's the part most teaching skips. Daniel 11:36-37 adds another layer. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished, for what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. Regard neither the God of his fathers. He comes from within a religious context. He's not an outsider, he's an apostate, nor the desire of women. This phrase is debated, but in context, it likely refers to either the Messiah, the desire of women in Jewish thought, or natural affection and family structure. Either way, it's a rejection of created order. And the conclusion: he shall exalt himself above them all, not through violence, through ideology. He doesn't destroy belief. He replaces it with himself, with the system, with a redefined morality that makes him the final arbiter of truth. And the terrifying part, Daniel says he prospers, not for a week, not for a month, until the wrath has been accomplished, meaning heaven allows it, for a season. Why? Because the final test of human history isn't survival, it's faithfulness. Will you worship the system or the king? Will you bow to cultural authority or biblical truth? Will you save your life or lose it for his sake? That's not abstract. That's coming, and the church is not ready. Now we come to the part that makes everything else make sense. Daniel 7:9-10. I watched till thrones were put in place, And the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. The court was seated. The books were opened. This is not the second coming. This is something that happens before it. A trial in heaven, not symbolic, juridical, legal, historical. God doesn't just judge the little horn. He judges the system, the network, the entire structure of human governance that culminated in the final rebellion. And it's not arbitrary. It's documented. The books are opened. Every decree, every law, every policy, every word spoken against the Most High, every persecution, every compromise, every moment when humanity chose power over truth, all of it recorded, evaluated, judged. And here's what most people miss. The judgment isn't about punishing individuals, it's about dismantling a system. Daniel 7:11-12. I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. The beast is slain, the system is destroyed, but the rest of the beasts, Babylon, Persia, Greece, their lives are prolonged. How can empires that fell centuries ago still be alive? Because they never died. They merged, they evolved. They became the ideological, legal, economic, and cultural DNA of the modern world. And when the final system falls, all of it is judged simultaneously. That's why the stone in Daniel 2 strikes the feet. Because when the feet crumble, the entire statue collapses. You can't fix the system. You can't reform it. You can't Christianize it. It has to fall. Now here's the part that changes everything. Daniel 7:13-14. I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. The Son of Man receives the kingdom, not by military conquest, not by democratic vote, not by cultural evolution, by divine decree, in a courtroom before the Ancient of Days, in the presence of 10,000 times 10,000 witnesses. The transfer of power is legal, authorized, irreversible, and who receives it with him? Daniel 7:18. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. The saints, not passive, not evacuated, not hiding in bunkers. They receive the kingdom, they possess it, they rule with him. But here's the question, which saints? Daniel 7:22 clarifies. Until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. A judgment was made in favor of the saints. not against the system only, in favor of the saints, meaning their faithfulness was evaluated, their endurance was measured. Their refusal to compromise was documented, and the verdict was, they win, not because they were perfect, but because they remained faithful when it cost them everything. This is why Daniel was sealed, because the generation that needed to hear this wasn't the one living under Nebuchadnezzar. It was the one living under the final expression of Babylon, the one that would face the choice, conform or be cancelled, comply or be excluded, worship the system or lose your place in it. That's not coming, that's here. And the reason most pastors don't preach Daniel 7 with urgency is because it requires them to admit that the church is not going to triumph culturally before Jesus returns. We're not going to reform the world into the kingdom. We're going to endure until the kingdom is given. And endurance isn't glamorous. It's costly. It means losing jobs for refusing to affirm lies. It means being labeled extreme for holding biblical definitions. It means watching the world call evil good and good evil and refusing to participate. But here's the promise buried in Daniel 12:2-3. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. The wise shine. Not the powerful, not the famous, not the ones who built platforms. The wise, the ones who understood the times, the ones who refused the system, the ones who turned many to righteousness when it was dangerous to do so. They shine like stars, forever. That's the reward. That's the inheritance. That's what Daniel was protecting, a kingdom that cannot be shaken, given to those who could not be moved. So where does that leave you? If everything we've just walked through is accurate, and the text says it is, then you're living in the most consequential moment in human history. Not the most comfortable, the most consequential. You're the generation Daniel saw, the one that would recognize the system, the one that would face the choice, the one that would either endure or conform. And here's what most people don't realize. You don't get to opt out. You're already in it. The question is whether you see it. Because if you see it, you live differently. You don't build your life around security. You build it around faithfulness. You don't measure success by cultural approval. You measure it by obedience. You don't fear losing what the world offers. You fear losing what eternity promises. And that shift from cultural Christian to kingdom citizen is what Daniel 12:10 calls wisdom. None of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. The wicked don't lack intelligence. They lack sight. They see the system and call it progress. They see the changes and call it evolution. They see the pressure and call it just being reasonable. But the wise see it for what it is. The final stage, the culmination, the test, and they don't panic. They prepare, not with bunkers and beans, with character, with scripture, with community, with a faith that doesn't need the world's permission to be true. Because here's the final revelation buried in Daniel. The kingdom doesn't come to those who predict the future. It comes to those who remain faithful in it. You don't have to know the exact day. You have to know the King. You don't have to decode every symbol. You have to live like it matters. You don't have to be a prophecy scholar. You have to be a faithful saint. And when the books are opened, and the court is seated, and the judgment is made in favor of the saints, your life will either be documented as one who endured or one who accommodated. That's the choice Daniel preserved for you. Not so you could be afraid, so you could be ready. The seals are breaking, the time is now, and the kingdom is closer than it's ever been.